Right. Well, it's interesting. You take a look at this group and you wonder when is the last dance approaching for them? It
Mm.
seemed like such a vibrant window a couple years ago when it seemed like they were going to the World Series, going to the LCS. Looked like perennial favorites.
It's
Um,
time for Sportsnaut's MLB podcast. Big League Buzz, news and interviews from around the majors. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
The second half of the Major League Baseball season is underway. We're going to talk about that, what to look for, what surprising stories, and to do that, we bring on one of the best. That is Gabe Lacques from USA Today. He is a guy who writes all about Major League Baseball. Gabe, thanks for being with us here today on Big League Buzz.
Yeah, no, it's a new beginning of sorts. Second half, a lot of teams still in it, so it's still kind of that fresh feeling of not anything could happen, but a lot of things could still happen.
Yes, I'm pretty sure, and I think you'll agree with me, that the Rockies are not making the postseason. But
Yeah.
no offense to Rockies fans. But I want to tie the bow a little bit here on the 2025 All-Star Game. Of course, the dramatic swing off, the first time that's ever happened, and really liked your post-game piece on winners and losers from the All-Star Game. And you noted that including the superstars from the game, they were unaware that this tiebreaker even existed. But yet this kind of worked out. It was exciting. It was fascinating. It caught a lot of people by surprise. But given that assessment and the fact that, the All-Star Game avoided what you called that death march of traditional extra innings, what are your overall thoughts on the swing off as a new tiebreaker, number one? And especially since a lot of the players that people would have liked to seen in the swing off were already out of the games and, in fact, departed the game. What were your overall thoughts?
Yeah, no, it was a very interesting emotional journey for me for about 90 minutes. Like, this is a thing. I totally forgot about it. Slipped into the CBA 4 years ago. And, since it hasn't come to be an issue since, everybody kind of forgot about it, even if they knew about it at the time. And my first, kind of visceral reaction was, you got to be kidding me. And then as you saw it, it was all right. And the guys were into it. And it did end the game. I mean, nothing is quite so made for TV as All-Star Week. When you go to the home run derby and all that kind of stuff to the game, and everything is basically an ESPN or a Fox production. So at the end of the day, it's kind of a television show, and the show has to end at some point. And while sometimes if games go long and extra innings, the ratings can get better because people get kind of curiosity, like, oh, it's the 12th inning, oh my gosh. But at the same time, it's like, all right, everybody wants to go home. Everybody wants to move on. These guys literally have flights to catch. So, I think it worked. I think it was fun. It is a little bit of a bummer how, for the casual fan who maybe doesn't know these things, like, hey, why not Aaron Judge? Well, Aaron Judge is halfway home, up in the air by then, and that's just kind of the reality of the situation. And I don't know if you remember way back in 2008, I guess it was 2007. Derek Jeter stayed to the end of that extra inning game, and that was the first time they kind of used the mega roster to avoid the tie in 2002. He was lauded for that. That was such a big deal. He didn't go home when he was taken out of the game. He stayed till the end of, I think it was a 14-inning game, something like that. So, I think it works. It takes the pressure off the managers. I think what they can do now is maybe cut down the rosters a little bit, just because you don't need, 11 pitchers for extra innings. They burned all of them. So, the roster thing is a little insane, especially when the injury thing, replacements start to happen. So there could be a little bit of trimming of the fat, but I think overall it worked. And I guess next time we all won't be so taken by surprise by it.
Yeah, I completely forgot about it too. And then as they were talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. And it's interesting. I wonder if they'll consider, now, again, it might not change because we're not going to have an extra inning game every year, right? But it might be interesting to see if some of those guys who left early with good reason would stay if the swing off changed. And it's like, okay, once you get to the swing off, you can bring players back in, right?
Right.
It'd be really interesting to see that. And listen, I am very critical, Gabe, of Major League Baseball and their lack of what I believe to be top-notch marketing. They do good jobs and obviously they're having a great season. It's very resurgent baseball. I think, culture right now, which is awesome. But I give them credit for that. Whether it was perfect or not doesn't matter. At least they're trying something different to breathe life into the sport to some maybe fans who are not as crazy about baseball as I am. And so from that perspective, at least I hope it worked for some people, and we'll see how it works going forward. But it'll be fascinating. All right, now let's get into the second half of the season. I want to start in the NL East, the Mets and the Phillies. The Phillies coming into the break had a World Series or bust mentality and a plan to be aggressive, buy at the trade deadline, upgrade their roster. How do you see the Phillies' second half strategy unfolding, especially in their division race with the Mets? And what might that impact their win now approach? And what does that do to them long term? Three-part question there, a little bit about what do you think is going to happen, and how does it affect the long term prospects of the Phillies?
Right. Well, it's interesting. You take a look at this group and you wonder when is the last dance approaching for them. It seemed like such a vibrant window a couple of years ago when it seemed like they were going to the World Series, going to the LCS. Looked like perennial favorites. And yeah, I think it's still going to be pedal to the metal. I think this, it's going to be an interesting period of time for management. Rob Thompson's done a nice job there. If they fall short this year, you wonder how that might look in the offseason. Dave Dombrowski's always been a kind of, all-in kind of guy. Will that need to require some rethinking if this doesn't work out this time? All really interesting questions to ponder, but I kind of feel like the window as it is really tied to Zach Wheeler. He's signed through 2027. And he's pretty adamant in so many words that that's it for him. He's going to retire. He's kind of the guy keeping them above water with regard to being a consistently good, even dominant team. And of course, re-signing Kyle Schwarber as well is we saw how clutch he was the other night. We saw how great he was in the first half. He's really the straw that kind of stirs the drink in there for this team. So it's going to be interesting to see how all in they are at the deadline. Like you said, the Mets nipping right at their heels. Very, very tricky for that to kind of thread the needle in that vein. But I think they'll upgrade. I think they'll do what they need to do to kind of keep this thing going, and hopefully they'll have for their purposes they'll have good health from Bryce Harper in the second half and continue. Kind of a key guy in all this, Jesus Luzardo, off to a great start. Kind of faded a bit about 2 months into the season. Can he just settle in? Because suddenly that would give them, three just really dominant lefties, and Sanchez, Suarez, and Luzardo, just really backing up Zach Wheeler really nicely in that rotation. That would make them much harder to beat. So yeah, they are a definite swing team when it comes to the deadline, when it comes to the second half for sure.
Yeah, and it's I'm buying extra popcorn and peanuts for the race out east because I think it's going to be fun. Now, I think another race that's going to be interesting, could be interesting, that is the NL West. The question is, can the Dodgers pitching make it to October? I mean, despite all of those amazing acquisitions, Blake Snell, Roki Sasaki, to bolster that pitching depth, many of their arms, including Glasnow, Kershaw, Snell, Sasaki, have spent time on the IL. With that health, Gabe, being an issue there, with 2 months now, they have to win the NL West. Do you think the Dodgers rotation is going to make it that far? And that reliance on Yamamoto too seems a little bit concerning. Is that their Achilles heel, or what do you think? Do you think they're going to end up pulling it off?
Well, I think the Dodgers have to consider themselves very fortunate, just because, and kind of silly that they're playing 600 ball, so it's not like they're bad, but they're definitely fallen far short of what we might consider a super team, surefire 100-win team, maybe 110-win team. But they should consider themselves very fortunate because they have three very live dogs chasing them. And those guys have not played up to their capabilities. When you look at the Padres, Giants, and Diamondbacks, they should be within a game or two of them. The Padres, they lost Michael King to injury. Jackson Merrill's been banged up and hasn't been as dynamic as he was. The Giants, it's 2010 all over again. It's torture baseball, incredible pitching without the hitting. I think the Giants are kind of dynamic still because, Willy Adames and Rafael Devers are trying to get acclimated to what's just let's just call it a terrible hitter's park. It can really kind of mess with you a little bit. And, Devers is still putting up the OPS, but not necessarily the home run numbers. Adama's starting to get it going. So in that case, I think that's the biggest thing that the Dodgers have to worry about is maybe getting run down from behind, and to your point, yeah, it's a lot of guys on the IL. It's a lot of guys, you just kind of wonder what they can give. And Glasnow pitched so well in I think it was his only start off the IL before the first half ended. Really interesting, because he's a guy that can give you pockets. Never been a 200 inning guy, never been a guy that, would be consistently healthy. But if he can give you one of those Glasnow bursts like he did in the first half of last year and the second half of this year, then that can really provide the Dodgers some separation. So I don't think much has changed from the standpoint of they have so much depth and just number that you can throw at pitching that it's not reliant on 1, 2, even 3 guys. It seems like they still have enough. I think what they do need to worry about is one of those guys underneath them catching going on a heater and running them down. But I think they have enough to play 600 ball. And then just as it is with every team in this postseason format and every year, how do you line up come October? Really hard to say right now, but I feel like the infrastructure is there for the Dodgers to continue to stay in that 600 win percentage mode and win the division. Interesting thing, though, do they get a first round bye? That's going to be a really interesting conversation this year because the Central is on fire. Mets, Phillies winner might have a better, record than them come the end. So, it would be very unbecoming for a team like the Dodgers to have to play in the first round. But that is looking increasingly like it's a possibility. I'm sure ESPN would love it. It would add juice to the wild card series. So a lot of moving parts to look forward to with the Dodgers this year.
And they might be playing one of their division rivals in that first round, by the way, which would be really interesting because both those teams, I think, built a little differently and can compete better in the postseason because, as you mentioned, because of the format. Now, another captivating storyline, of course, we can't get too far, Gabe, away from the big dumper, right? You look at the AL MVP race between Judge and Raleigh, and 38 first half. I mean, you've written about it. We've read about it. We've seen it. Just a great rising of what is a legitimate star. But then you have Judge still holds an edge with big numbers. Raleigh's gained some momentum, obviously. The All-Star game and the Home Run Derby helped that as well. What do you believe is the realistic likelihood of Cal Raleigh truly unseating Judge for the AL MVP? And how significant would it be for a catcher to win that?
Yeah, it's legitimately very interesting to watch, and we get that MVP fatigue sometimes. You've seen it in the NBA with Jokic and they've already won it a couple times. We need to get a new guy in there. I don't think that'll necessarily be the case. I think everybody realizes how much Judge means to the Yankees. His numbers are still ridiculous. He's still, I think, in the running for the Triple Crown, with Cal Raleigh actually being the guy that that's kind of keeping him from that right now. So it's going to reveal itself. I don't think it's going to be a controversy one way or another. But I think like if they were to maintain their arcs right now, I think it would be Cal Raleigh just because he's a catcher and he's at that. If he continues his pace, he would break Judge's record, which is absolutely insane for home runs. He did, 63. But if he continues his arc, if you will, and gets north of 50 home runs and continues to handle this incredible pitching staff, and if you take them today and put them in the same spots on October 1st, I think Cal is the guy. But again, the second half for catchers, it's tough. I know they're going to give him a lot of DH days because his bat is so important. But with that said, it is pretty tricky, and Judge does have a little deeper track record. So I think by the end, we're going to see the answer. I'm leaning toward Judge, but obviously we don't put anything past Big Dumper at this point. So if he's that guy on October 1st that he is here as we sit in mid-July, I think he's probably going to be the MVP.
Yeah, and if it's even close, listen, breaking Johnny Bench's records. I mean, all the stuff that he did before even the All-Star break. Right. I mean, it's a historic season for a player and for a catcher. So either way, it's going to be continue to be a great story. Hopefully he continues on that track. Now we look ahead to the trade deadline. Lastly here, lots of chatter about it maybe being a slow deadline because there's a lot more buyers and sellers, scarcity on the frontline starter, ace type pitchers. You have Alcantara out there, sort of, I think is the crown jewel in the trade market, but he had first half struggles. So given this unique market dynamic, how do you anticipate teams like the Blue Jays? We talked about the Phillies already. We talked about the Padres looking for a hitter. How do you think they're going to navigate this market? What's going to happen, and how do you see it going down?
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially now that the Red Sox have inserted themselves as winners of 10 in a row and holders of a wild card spot at the moment. So, the AL East looked very, just not its usual self a few weeks ago, and now suddenly it's Jays, Yankees, Red Sox, all kind of in playoff position and ready to make some noise. And then you go to the National League, that the Cubs have a fantastic bit of equity with the first half that they've had. They have a really good team. They need a starting pitcher. Dodgers probably need a starting pitcher. So yeah, it's again, it's who's going to be, the arms that are available. And I kind of think the one guy that really will be getting a lot of attention and whatnot, will be Seth Lugo going forward, because he's pitched better than almost anybody the last couple of years. And what the Royals will do, that remains to be seen a little bit. Do they cash it in when they had a great year and but got a lot of fan loyalty back and all that? But if they slip out of it, Lugo has an opt out for next year, so you kind of figure he's going to opt out at this as he sits now, because he's looking to really rake it in on after getting a 3-year $45 million contract. So you look at the Yankees, the Red Sox, both in desperate need of pitching. The Dodgers always could use another arm, and then the Cubs desperately need another arm, just because they're so well put together in so many other facets that if you slide a top-notch arm into that, maybe they can finally get some separation from the Brewers. So you're right. It's very much a seller's market. It's going to be very frustrating to fans, because fans get so hyped up about it, and even a certain segment of the media ecosystem runs on it, if you will.
Yes.
But this is the modern playoff era. There's so many teams who fancy themselves contenders still, that it's going to be I don't want to say it's going to be a dud, but calibrate your expectations appropriately.
Yeah, I'm sure for one or two teams and their fan base, it'll be awesome, right? Because you're going to get that one pitcher, that one hitter that does move, because there's always somebody who moves. But yeah, it's not going to be the smorgasbord of deals like you see in past years. So it'll be interesting. But we will keep reading you, Gabe Lacques, to make sure we're up to speed on that. Of course, follow him. You can get all his information down below in the description. Gabe, thanks so much for joining us on Big League Buzz, and we'll catch up with you as things heat up down the line.
Thank you kindly, and we'll be here for you for sure.